Welcome back. It's the Country Viewpoint here on Flow FM. You're with Ellis Gelios, and we've spent the last week investigating what the current landscape is like for rural pharmacies. The government came out about a month ago or so and declared that all is well, apparently, and that the future of rural pharmacies is viable. Well, I've gone and chased two rural pharmacists and pharmacy proprietors this week on the Country Viewpoint program to get their views on this, and it's fair to say that neither of them agree. The first of the two pharmacists I spoke with was Ben Brendesick from the Terry White Chemmart in Urana. Ben, good to be speaking with you again. How are you?
I'm very well, Ellis. It's nice to be on the flow, not talking about football for a change. Actually, talking about something that I actually probably know something about. So, no, it's great to be with you guys again. You provide a great service to rural people like us. So, no, more than happy to give you an explanation of how it affects me and my patient. 2 seconds to give a bit of background to me. So, I don't just own. I own 5 pharmacies, all in rural locations, and actually most of them are in your general listening area. So in southern New South Wales, the Riverina part of New South Wales, but also up in the high country in northeast Victoria. So I suppose, in essence, what this means is that we're going to take a very big haircut in the way in which we are remunerated for the work that we do. So when I've tried to explain to a lot of patients, I've sort of said, well, I'm going to be giving you twice the supply for only one service charge for me to give you that medicine. And it's going to have an enormous effect on the bottom line of all of my businesses. I'm probably a lot luckier than a lot of other people where I don't have a sort of a lot of debt or a lot of other burdens in my life. But in saying that, still, I did have the opportunity to listen to a couple of my other colleagues who have spoken to you also. We all have done, independent modelling or had some modelling done for our businesses. And, for example, at Urana, which is a little town of about 500 people, we also look after a town called Oaklands, which is 30k away, about the same size. I'm looking at about a $60,000 to $70,000 reduction in my bottom line profit, and that will affect, I employ a staff member, that might have to be revisited. I provide sponsorship to the local football club that I have for years. That'll have to be revisited. Free Webster packing, free deliveries, delivering down to Oaklands, which is a fair distance away. I'll have to start charging for those things, as well as looking at, increasing my charges for my normal everyday pharmacy stock. So, the one thing I suppose a lot of us pharmacists have been disappointed about is that the lack of consultation, from government. We haven't really heard too much. You hear lots of stuff in the media, but nothing that's actually, giving us any detail on specifics on how they want this to roll out. But I suppose one thing that probably annoys some of us is that I don't sort of like to give a running commentary on how GPs run their businesses, and to hear other medical professionals giving advice on how this will affect pharmacies. They have no idea. They're not pharmacists. I don't know how to run a GP practice. I wouldn't pretend to think that I know how to run a GP practice. And I think it's the same for people in the medical profession about running pharmacies. There's more to it than what sees than what is actually happening. And that's been disappointing to see other people making comments on things that they don't know too much about.
There we go. Well, Ben, I just get the feeling personally that a lot of general punters probably, scoff at this kind of thing. They probably, the mentality might be, well, pharmacies, they're cashed up. It's a part of healthcare. How can they not have money? But really, we're talking about regional and rural businesses here, and quite clearly it is affecting livelihood. So this is a big deal, and you just don't feel like it's getting the airtime right now.
No, it's not. And I think we're all very quick as people to judge what we think other people are doing or how well other people are going, and that's just human nature. I understand that, but running a rural business is very difficult. I mean, I know I've been doing it for 20 years, trying to find qualified staff, trying to find properly trained staff. trying to find suppliers to get things to you. There are lots and lots of challenges in running any sort of business, be that in a rural locality. And I think what most of the people in our industry are talking about is we want the government to get back to the table with our peak lobby groups and to sit down and to listen to our concerns and to negotiate an outcome that's good for patients. Ellis, I don't know one pharmacist in all of Australia, either be that an owner pharmacist or an employee pharmacist, who doesn't want people to save money on their medical costs. None of us are against that. But when you've got a government out there spruiking this, they're not the ones that are paying for it. It's your local community pharmacist that's paying for it. And unfortunately, we need to make money. That's the whole thing about being in business, to employ staff, to employ local people, to support local community groups. And also, we're there socially as well. Like in Urana, there's probably 4 or 5 businesses in town. For a lot of people, it's an outing for them to come down and talk to us about what happened in the footy on the weekend, or what happened at the bowls club, or this sort of stuff. So there's more to it than just simple. The dollars and cents are important, but there's also a really severe social impact that I think is going to have an even bigger burden on people. And I'll cut to the chase. I have considered. There's probably 2 of my stores that, if this goes through, I'll probably have to consider closing, because if you can't make a return on your investment, I've invested my money and time in these businesses. It doesn't matter if you're in healthcare or whatever you're doing. If you can't make a return, well, you're better off taking that out and going to do something else. So, it's going to have a really, really severe impact. And I think the main message that me as a pharmacist want to get through to my patients is that I'm not against you saving money, but we just want the government to come back to us, sit down at the table in good faith, and work out a solution that's in everyone's best interest.
Ben Brendisink is the very prominent proprietor for pharmacies across our Flow FM network. We really appreciate all your commentary that you've provided today on the air, and we'll certainly be keeping across this with you, Ben. Thanks so much for your time.
No problem, Ellis. Anytime. Thanks, mate.
I've got Ian McGill on the line. He's the rural pharmacist who's wanting to have his say with regards to the government's position on the state of rural pharmacies right now. Firstly, Ian, just tell us quickly about the pharmacy that you run and how things are right now as far as the conditions go with which you're operating under.
Okay, my pharmacy is based in Chiefston. It's a rural pharmacy. We service a community of a couple of thousand. Our jobs include everything that's standard within a pharmacy, plus a social touch point for our community. I hesitate to say really that we are a social part of our community, a very important part. And we have now come across this new policy called 60-day dispensing that the government have brought about, and that actually threatens the viability of my pharmacy and many other pharmacies across Australia. So instead of sort of focusing on helping our patients, a lot of pharmacy owners across Australia are stressed out to the max, wondering how on earth we can maintain our businesses while still providing essential service to our communities. It's a scary position to be in at the moment, I'm afraid.
All right, so just so we get a clear picture on this, Ian, has the problem from your point of view been the communication from the government? Because it seems as though the government is making it sound like more pharmacies are being given this $90,000 sum than what is actually the case. Or is it a case that we're actually getting information that's incorrect here?
Well, communication with the government has been essentially non-existent from the start. They made this announcement saying that they were going to introduce it. They had no interaction with any pharmacy body whatsoever. They just made the decision saying it's going to save patients money. Then what came out from the president of the RACGP was saying that, it's not going to be a problem. Rural pharmacy across Australia, all rural pharmacies will receive $90,000 cash injection a year. That's far from the truth, and it created quite a bit of outrage among pharmacists, pharmacy owners, staff, and everyone who has anything to do with pharmacy business. Look, the rural pharmacy maintenance allowance is an injection of money that's given to rural pharmacies across Australia to help maintain its viability and to help provide services to the community, often at a free charge or at a low cost to patients. That $90,000 that was stated is the total amount that would be given to a pharmacy in a very remote location that does essentially very, very few scripts a year. My pharmacy, based in Geeveston, is what we call a MM Model 5 pharmacy, so it's a rural pharmacy. My increase of funds from the Rural Pharmacy Maintenance Allowance totals $14,000 a year. After the government, with a number of economic analysis that I've done on my business, I will lose anywhere from $120,000 call funding to about $160,000. So out of that loss of funding that I use to give patients free medical services, free Webster packs, free deliveries, there are a lot of services we provide free of charge. That funding has been stripped out of my business, which means I won't be able to provide these services at free or even risk closing my business down.
Ian said in that media release that, there was this new sort of structure whereby allied health services, pharmacies, doctors are all going to be on board and ensuring that it would be more feasible for pharmacies in isolated parts of the country to make sure they're looking after those who are regular customers in these pharmacies, with being able to provide certain services that they might have ordinarily relied on to, get at their local clinic or GP that visits them or whatever the case might be. You're saying that that's just not the way it's going to be, Ian, at least as far as your business is concerned.
Well, I talk quite extensively with rural pharmacy owners across rural, remote rural, metropolitan. When you start stripping out over $100,000 out of a small pharmacy like mine, I'm not sure how the government expects us to provide more services at value for customers and for patients. It just doesn't make sense. So what we have to do is look at our business model and go, well, how do we make more money and how do we cut expenses? And there are suggestions of reducing staff, reducing number of hours that we're open, increasing charges of everything across the board to try and compensate for that loss of income. But the problem is, in rural pharmacies across Australia, we have generally one pharmacist and one or two pharmacy assistants working. So our ability to cut any expenses are essentially nil. So the government are expecting us to do all this extra stuff for no additional funding. And there are things like what they suggested a pharmacist might be able to go out to a nursing home and do some additional services. In a rural pharmacy, that means that pharmacist has to close the pharmacy and go and do the services outside of the pharmacy, because you can't have a pharmacy open without a pharmacist present. So we've got all these practical sort of issues, funding issues, that are really going to destroy rural community health networks, which are our pharmacies across Australia.
Okay, from your understanding, Ian, which rural pharmacies are going to benefit from this supposed $90,000?
I believe there'd be very few, and it's actually not $90,000 extra. These pharmacies have been receiving, off the top of my head, I think it's about $49,000.
So it's about half that more. Yeah,
about a little less than half that amount. So, in actual fact, these pharmacies are receiving an additional $40-something thousand. It's not an additional $90,000; it's an additional $40,000. And how many pharmacies? I'm not sure, but there wouldn't be too many. We're talking about very remote communities like Longreach, Coober Pedy, Thursday Island. We're not talking about the majority of pharmacies that would benefit. And if they're losing income from their dispensing, very few would actually benefit from this additional cash injection. It will just delay the losses.
All right, Ian McGill, we're going to finish with just discussing National Pain Week. We're seeing a number of rural community pharmacies offer initiatives for people to come in and just learn more about how to manage their chronic pain. So obviously a very important time to, keep those in mind who do suffer with pain chronically and probably don't have a whole lot of support when it comes to being able to manage their pain.
Exactly, and they can come into pharmacies, and we like to try and utilise ways of managing pain without resorting to medications. Medications have their place in all forms of therapy. Coming into pharmacy, talking about what you can do to help manage your pain and get on with life is a very important aspect and one that we're all willing to help our communities with.
Ian McGill is the pharmacist and the owner of the Jeeveston Pharmacy in Tasmania. Ian, really thankful for your time, and we'll check in with you again soon, that is for sure. All the best with everything going forward, despite the circumstances not being particularly favourable for you and all those in your industry right now.
Thank you so much for your time, Ellis.
Ian McGill, the rural pharmacist, giving us his views today on the Country View.